Dr. Alex Thompson had spent 3 long months on the alien planet Zephyria, and he was exhausted. As Earth's first human ambassador to visit their world, every single day had been filled with careful meetings, strange customs, and the constant pressure of not making any mistakes that could ruin relations between their two species. The Zephyrian Empire was unlike anything humans had ever encountered. Their cities floated in the sky, connected by bridges of pure energy. The aliens themselves were tall and graceful, with skin that seemed to shimmer like starlight and eyes that glowed with an inner light. They were incredibly advanced, but also very traditional and formal in their ways. Alex had worked hard to understand their culture. He learned their greeting rituals, studied their history, and even tried to speak some of their language, though the universal translator did most of the work. He genuinely found their civilization fascinating, which seemed to surprise many of the Zephyrians he met. Most other species who visited their world only cared about their technology or trade agreements. On his final day, Alex was called to the grand palace of King Vexthar, the ruler of the entire Zephyrian Empire. The palace was a marvel of crystal and light, floating high above the clouds. Alex had met the king several times during his stay, but this was different. This was the formal farewell ceremony. King Vexthar was an imposing figure, nearly 9 feet tall with elaborate robes that seemed to be made of liquid starlight. His crown was a complex geometric shape that floated above his head, rotating slowly. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of authority that came from ruling billions of beings across dozens of worlds. "Ambassador Thompson," the king said, his words translated instantly by the device in Alex's ear. "Your time among us has been most enlightening. You have shown respect for our ways and genuine curiosity about our people. This is rare among the visitors we receive." Alex bowed in the traditional Zephyrian manner, placing his hands together and lowering his head. "The honor has been mine, Your Majesty. Your civilization has taught me so much about what's possible when science and wisdom work together." The king's expression seemed pleased, though it was hard to tell with alien features. "It is our custom to present departing guests of honor with a gift that represents the highest respect we can offer. For you, Ambassador Thompson, I have chosen something very special." Alex expected to receive some kind of technological device or perhaps a piece of their beautiful crystal art. Instead, 2 guards entered the throne room, gently escorting a female Zephyrian between them. She was clearly in poor condition. Her clothes were torn and dirty, nothing like the elegant robes worn by other Zephyrians Alex had met. She looked thin and tired, and she kept her glowing eyes fixed on the floor. Her skin, which should have shimmered like the others, seemed dull and lifeless. "This is Lyra," King Vexthar announced. "She belongs to the Wanderer caste, those without fixed purpose or place in our society. According to our most sacred traditions, I present her to you as a gift of highest honor." Alex felt his stomach drop. He stared at the king, then at the female Zephyrian, then back at the king. "I'm sorry, Your Majesty, but I don't understand. You're giving me a person?" "Indeed. In our culture, the gift of a living being represents the ultimate trust and respect. It shows that we believe you are worthy of responsibility for another's welfare. It is the greatest honor we can bestow." The words hit Alex like a physical blow. He looked at Lyra, who still hadn't raised her eyes from the floor. She seemed to be trembling slightly, though whether from fear, cold, or something else, he couldn't tell. Alex's mind raced. Everything he had learned about Zephyrian culture told him that refusing this gift would be seen as a terrible insult. It could destroy all the progress that had been made in human-Zephyrian relations. But accepting felt wrong on every level he could think of. His cultural advisor, Dr. Bennett, who had been standing quietly beside him, leaned over and whispered urgently in his ear. "Alex, you have to accept. I know how this looks, but refusing would be catastrophic. The king is offering you the highest honor in their civilization. If you reject it, they'll see it as a rejection of their entire culture." Alex looked at Dr. Bennett with wide eyes. "But this is a person we're talking about, a living being. I can't just accept ownership of someone." "You don't understand their caste system," Dr. Bennett whispered back. The wanderer caste exists outside their normal society. They have no family, no home, no purpose. In their culture, this is actually giving her a chance at a better life. But if you refuse, it will be seen as an insult not just to the king, but to their entire way of life. The throne room fell silent, except for the soft humming of the energy systems that kept the palace floating. Alex could feel the weight of dozens of eyes upon him. Important Zephyrian officials filled the room, all waiting to see how the human would respond to their king's generous gift. Alex took a deep breath and stepped forward. "Your Majesty, I am deeply honored by this gift. I accept with gratitude and promise to treat Lyra with the respect and care she deserves." King Vexthar nodded approvingly. "Excellent. May this bond between our peoples grow stronger with time." The ceremony continued with more formal words and rituals, but Alex barely heard them. His mind was focused on the implications of what had just happened. When it was finally over, he found himself on the transport ship back to Earth with Lyra, sitting quietly in the corner of the passenger compartment. She hadn't spoken a single word since leaving the palace. The ship's medical bay had provided her with clean clothes and a meal, but she ate very little and kept to herself. Alex tried several times to start a conversation, but her responses were brief and formal. "You don't have to be afraid," Alex told her during one attempt. "I want you to know that when we get to Earth, you'll be free to make your own choices about your life." Lyra looked up at him for the first time, her glowing eyes meeting his. "You do not understand," she said quietly. "I have no choices. I am Wanderer caste. I exist at the pleasure of others. That might be how things work on Zephyria, but Earth is different. All beings have rights there, regardless of where they come from or what their background is." She studied his face for a long moment, as if trying to determine whether he was telling the truth. Then she simply nodded and returned to staring out the window at the stars. As the days passed during their journey to Earth, Alex began to notice things about Lyra that puzzled him. Despite her apparent low status, she seemed incredibly intelligent. He often caught her watching him work on his reports and research notes, her eyes following his movements with intense concentration. When he was organizing biological samples he had collected from Zephyria, she would sometimes position herself where she could observe, though she never came close enough to actually interfere. There was something in the way she looked at his work that suggested she understood more than she was letting on. One evening, Alex was struggling with a particularly complex genetic sequence analysis when he noticed Lyra watching him from across the room. On impulse, he turned to her and said, "I don't suppose you know anything about biological research?" She shook her head quickly. "I am not educated in such matters. I am Wanderer caste." But Alex had caught something in her expression, a flicker of interest that seemed to contradict her words. He decided to keep watching her more carefully. As Earth grew larger in the ship's viewports, Alex wondered what he had gotten himself into. He had accepted Lyra to prevent a diplomatic disaster, but he had no idea what to do with her once they arrived. All he knew was that his life had just become much more complicated, and he had a feeling that there was much more to his quiet passenger than met the eye. The ship's communication system chimed, indicating they were approaching Earth's solar system. Alex looked over at Lyra, who was staring out at the blue and white planet growing larger ahead of them. "That's home," he said simply. She nodded, but he could see uncertainty in her glowing eyes. For better or worse, they were about to find out. What would happen when a human and a Zephyrian tried to build a life together on a world where neither of them was quite sure of the rules? The moment Alex and Lyra stepped off the transport ship at Earth's main spaceport, chaos erupted. News reporters had somehow gotten wind of the story, and camera crews pushed forward, shouting questions and snapping photos. Security guards rushed to create a barrier, but the damage was already done. "Dr. Thompson, is it true you brought back an alien woman?" One reporter yelled. "What are your intentions with this being?" Another shouted. Alex shielded Lyra as they hurried through the crowd toward the waiting government vehicle. He could feel her trembling beside him, overwhelmed by the noise and attention. Her glowing eyes darted nervously from face to face, clearly frightened by the aggressive behavior of the human media. Once safely inside the vehicle, Alex turned to her. I'm sorry about that. I had no idea they would be waiting for us. Lyra pressed herself against the far corner of the seat. Your people seem very loud, she said quietly. The drive to Alex's research facility took them through the heart of the city, and Lyra stared out the windows in fascination. Earth's architecture was so different from the floating crystal cities of Zephyria. Everything was solid, built from stone and metal, rooted firmly to the ground. It's all so heavy, she observed. How do your buildings not sink into the earth? Alex smiled. We build foundations deep underground to support them. Not as elegant as your floating cities, but it works for us. When they arrived at the research complex, Alex immediately took Lyra to the guest quarters he had arranged for her. The rooms were simple but comfortable, with a bed, bathroom, and small sitting area. He had stocked the refrigerator with various foods, unsure what she might eat. This is yours for as long as you need it, he told her. You're free to come and go as you please. You're not a prisoner here. Lyra looked around the space with wonder. This is all for me? Of course. I told you, things are different on Earth. You have rights here, including the right to your own space and privacy. But privacy was exactly what they didn't have. Within hours, Alex's phone was ringing constantly. Government officials wanted to interview Lyra. Scientists wanted to study her. The media was camping outside the facility gates. His own colleagues were divided between fascination and concern about his decision to bring her to Earth. Dr. Patricia Wells, his research partner, cornered him in his office the next morning. Alex, do you have any idea what you've done? The entire scientific community is talking about nothing else. Some people are calling you a hero for advancing human-alien relations. Others are saying you've compromised security by bringing an unknown entity to Earth. Alex rubbed his tired eyes. He hadn't slept well, worried about Lyra and what her presence might mean for both their futures. She's not an entity, Patricia. She's a person who was living in terrible conditions and deserved a chance at something better. But what do you really know about her? What if she's some kind of spy or scout for their military? Look at her, Alex said. Does she seem like a spy to you? She's malnourished, scared, and speaks barely above a whisper. If the Zephyrians wanted to send a spy, don't you think they'd choose someone a bit more capable? Despite his words, Alex had to admit he was curious about Lyra's background. Over the next few days, he noticed she had some unusual habits. Every morning, he would find that she had rearranged the furniture in her room into precise, geometric patterns. The books he had left for her were stacked in complex pyramids. Even her food was arranged on her plate in perfect mathematical sequences. More intriguingly, his electronic equipment had started malfunctioning whenever she was nearby. Computer screens would flicker, and his analysis machines would produce strange readings. At first, he thought it was coincidence, but the pattern was too consistent to ignore. The breakthrough came on the fourth night. Alex had been working late in his laboratory, struggling with a complex genetic analysis of the Zephyrian plant samples he had brought back. The work was incredibly difficult, requiring him to decode alien DNA structures that followed completely different rules than Earth biology. Around midnight, exhausted and frustrated, he decided to take a break. As he walked through the facility toward the break room, he passed the laboratory and noticed a light was on. Quietly, he approached and peered through the window. Lyra was inside, standing before his main computer terminal. But she wasn't just looking at it, she was working. Her fingers moved across the holographic interface with incredible speed and precision, manipulating the genetic data in ways Alex had never seen before. What shocked him most was what she had accomplished. The analysis that had been giving him trouble for weeks was not only complete, but she had found patterns in the data that he had completely missed. Complex genetic relationships were mapped out in elegant three-dimensional models that made perfect sense. Alex pushed open the door and Lyra spun around, her eyes wide with what looked like panic. I am sorry, she said quickly, backing away from the terminal. I did not mean to touch your work, I was only… Wait, Alex said, holding up his hand. Don't apologize. What you've done here, this is incredible. How did you know how to do this? Lyra's eyes darted toward the door as if she was considering running. I should not have interfered. It was not my place. Lyra, please, I'm not angry. I'm amazed. This work would have taken me months to complete, and you've done it in a few hours. Where did you learn to do genetic analysis? For a long moment, she didn't answer. Then slowly she moved back toward the computer terminal. You wish to know the truth about me? Alex nodded. I think it's time, don't you? Lyra took a deep breath, and when she spoke again, her voice was different, stronger, more confident. I was not always Wanderer Cast. I was once the lead researcher for the Zephyrian Institute of Biological Sciences. I spent my life studying the genetic patterns of life across our empire. Alex felt his mouth drop open. You're a scientist? I was, until I made the mistake of questioning why our society forbids females from advancing beyond certain levels in scientific research. I published papers suggesting that our caste system was based on tradition rather than ability. I proposed that intelligence and talent were distributed equally among all castes and genders. What happened? Lyra's expression grew sad. The ruling council declared my research dangerous to social stability. They stripped me of my position, my home, my family connections. I was reclassified as Wanderer Caste as punishment for my inappropriate ambitions. Alex stared at her in disbelief. So when King Vexthar gave you to me, he was disposing of an embarrassment to the established order, though I suspect he may not have realized the full implications of what he was doing. The full implications? Lyra gestured toward the computer screen, where her analysis still glowed in complex patterns. Your samples contain genetic markers that suggest something extraordinary, Dr. Thompson. Something that could change everything we understand about the relationship between our species. Alex looked at the screen, then back at Lyra. What exactly are you saying? I am saying that the Wanderer Caste Beggar you were given as a diplomatic gift may have just discovered the key to unlocking secrets that neither of our civilizations was prepared to find. As Alex processed this revelation, he realized that everything he thought he knew about his situation had just changed completely. The quiet, frightened alien woman he had brought to Earth was actually one of the most brilliant scientists in the galaxy, and whatever she had discovered in his laboratory was apparently significant enough to alter the relationship between humans and Zephyrians forever. Outside, the media was still camped at the facility gates, completely unaware that the real story was just beginning to unfold inside the building behind them. Over the next few weeks, Alex and Lyra worked together in secret, deep into the night when the facility was empty. What they uncovered was beyond anything either of them had imagined possible. The genetic analysis revealed that humans and Zephyrians shared ancient DNA markers that shouldn't exist. According to everything scientists knew, the two species had evolved on completely different worlds, billions of miles apart. Yet here was undeniable evidence that they had some kind of common origin. Look at this sequence, Lyra said, pointing to a complex pattern on the holographic display. This genetic marker appears in both human and Zephyrian DNA, but it's so old that it must date back millions of years. Alex leaned closer to study the data. That's impossible. Our species couldn't have had contact that long ago. Humans weren't even spacefaring until recently. Exactly. Which means either our understanding of galactic history is completely wrong, or something else entirely is happening here. They worked through the night, comparing sample after sample. Each test confirmed the same impossible truth. Not only did the species share ancient genetic material, but they were compatible in ways that defied scientific explanation. Alex, Lyra said quietly, her voice filled with awe. I think we need to run one more test. What kind of test? She hesitated, then looked directly at him. A compatibility analysis between your genetic material and mine. Alex felt his heart skip a beat. Are you saying what I think you're saying? I'm saying that all this data suggests our species might be able to combine successfully. The genetic markers align in a way that could theoretically produce offspring. The implications hit Alex like a thunderbolt. If humans and Zephyrians could interbreed, it would revolutionize everything both civilizations understood about biology, evolution, and their place in the universe. They ran the analysis 3 times. To be certain, each result was the same. Not only were they compatible, but any offspring would likely possess enhanced abilities from both species, increased intelligence, longer lifespan, and adaptation capabilities that could help both races survive in hostile environments. "This is incredible," Alex whispered. "This could change everything." But their excitement was short-lived. The next morning, Dr. Wells burst into Alex's office with a worried expression. "We have a problem," she announced. "Someone's been asking questions about your work. Government agents were here yesterday while you were out, wanting to know about the genetic samples you brought back from Zephyria." Alex felt a chill run down his spine. "What kind of questions?" "They wanted to know if you had discovered anything that could be used for military purposes. They seemed particularly interested in Lyra and whether she had any special abilities." That afternoon, Alex noticed unmarked vehicles parked outside the facility. Men in dark suits sat inside, watching the building. When he mentioned it to Lyra, she grew pale. "This is not good," she said. "On Zephyria, when the government becomes interested in someone's research, that person often disappears." "This is Earth," Alex assured her. "Things don't work that way here." But his confidence was shaken when he arrived at work the next morning to find that someone had tried to break into his laboratory during the night. Security cameras showed figures in black clothing attempting to access his computer systems, though they had been unsuccessful. "We need to hide our research," Lyra urged. "If they discover what we've found, they will try to use it for purposes we never intended." Alex nodded, quickly copying their data to encrypted storage devices. But as they worked to secure their findings, something unexpected happened. Lyra suddenly grabbed his arm, her eyes wide with alarm. "Someone's coming," she whispered. "I can sense them." "How can you possibly?" Before he could finish the question, armed figures in tactical gear burst through the laboratory doors. They moved with military precision, surrounding Alex and Lyra, before either could react. "Step away from the computer," the lead figure commanded. "Dr. Thompson, you and the alien are coming with us." "On whose authority?" Alex demanded. "National security. Your research has been classified as potentially dangerous to public safety." As the soldiers moved toward them, something extraordinary happened. Lyra stepped forward, and suddenly every electronic device in the room began to malfunction. Computer screens flickered wildly, lights strobed on and off, and the soldiers' communication equipment erupted in static. "What the hell?" one of them shouted. Alex stared in amazement as Lyra seemed to glow with an inner light. The air around her crackled with energy, and he could feel the hair on his arm standing up from the electromagnetic field she was generating. "Stay back," she warned the soldiers, her voice carrying a power Alex had never heard before. "I do not wish to harm you, but I will protect myself and Dr. Thompson if necessary." The lead soldier raised his weapon, but the electronic sight immediately went dead. "What are you?" he asked, his voice filled with fear. "I am what your people might call evolved," Lyra replied calmly. "My abilities were one of the reasons I was exiled from Zephyrian society. My people feared what I might become. The electromagnetic pulse she had generated had disabled all the soldiers' equipment, including their communications. They found themselves trapped in a room with a being whose capabilities they had grossly underestimated. "We need to leave," Lyra told Alex. "More will come, and next time they will be better prepared." As they moved toward the exit, Alex couldn't help but stare at her in wonder. "Why didn't you tell me you could do that?" "Because I hoped I would never need to. These abilities mark me as dangerous to both our species. But now that our secret is out, we have little choice." They managed to escape the facility, but Alex knew their troubles were just beginning. As they drove away in his vehicle, he could see more government cars converging on the building behind them. "Where can we go?" he asked. Lyra was quiet for a moment, then said, "There is something else I must tell you. Something about why King Vexithar really gave me to you." "What do you mean?" I believe he knew about my abilities, and I believe he suspected what we would discover together. This was not a random diplomatic gift, Alex. This was planned. Alex felt his world tilting again. Planned by whom? By forces on both our worlds who have been waiting for this moment for a very long time. Our meeting, our research, our discovery, none of it was coincidence. We have been brought together for a purpose that goes far beyond anything either of us imagined. As they drove through the night toward an uncertain destination, Alex realized that their incredible discovery had put them at the center of something much larger and more dangerous than a simple scientific breakthrough. They had become the key to secrets that powerful people on both worlds were willing to kill to protect or control. Behind them, the lights of the research facility grew smaller in the distance, but Alex knew there was no turning back now. Whatever came next, he and Lyra would face it together. Alex and Lyra spent the next 3 days hiding in a small cabin in the mountains, trying to figure out their next move. The news had exploded across both worlds. Every major news network was covering the story of the human scientist and the alien woman who had made a discovery that could change everything. On Earth, people were divided. Some saw Lyra as humanity's future, a bridge to advanced alien technology and evolution. Others viewed her as a threat, an invader who had come to corrupt human genetics. Protesters gathered outside government buildings, some demanding her protection, others calling for her removal from the planet. The situation on Zephyria was even more chaotic. Word had spread that the supposed beggar King Vexthar had given away was actually one of their greatest scientific minds. The lower castes were rising up, demanding to know how many other brilliant beings had been wasted because of the rigid social system. "Look at this," Alex said, showing Lyra a news report on his tablet. "Your people are calling you a hero. They're saying you've proven that intelligence has nothing to do with what caste someone is born into." Lyra watched the footage of crowds gathering in the floating cities of her homeworld. "They are taking great risks by speaking out. The ruling council does not tolerate challenges to their authority. But change is happening. You started something that can't be stopped now." Their quiet discussion was interrupted by the sound of approaching aircraft. Through the cabin windows, they could see military helicopters circling overhead and ground vehicles moving up the mountain road. "They found us," Alex said grimly. But these weren't the same soldiers who had attacked them at the laboratory. As the vehicles stopped outside the cabin, Alex recognized some of the figures stepping out: government officials, military leaders, and to his great surprise, several Zephyrian dignitaries. The most shocking sight was King Vexthar himself, unmistakable even in the simple travel robes he wore instead of his usual royal garments. "Thompson, Lyra," came a voice through a loudspeaker. "We need to talk. We come not as enemies but as representatives of both our peoples. The situation has grown beyond what any of us expected." Alex looked at Lyra, who nodded slowly. "I suppose we can't keep running forever," she said. They stepped outside to find themselves facing a remarkable gathering. Human officials stood alongside Zephyrian diplomats, all looking unusually serious. King Vexthar approached them directly, his tall figure commanding attention even without his crown. "Lyra," he said, his voice carrying a tone Alex had never heard from him before. It was almost apologetic. "I owe you an explanation." "You owe me nothing, Your Majesty," Lyra replied formally. "I serve at your pleasure as always." "No," the king said firmly. "That is no longer true. What you have accomplished here has shown me the terrible mistake our society has made. You were never meant to be wanderer caste. You were meant to be exactly where you are now." General Harrison, the head of Earth's Alien Relations Department, stepped forward. "Dr. Thompson, we need to discuss the implications of your discovery. Both governments are prepared to offer you a deal." "What kind of deal?" Alex asked suspiciously. "Complete your research in secret, under joint Earth-Zephyrian supervision. In exchange, Lyra will be granted full citizenship on Earth, and you'll both be given unlimited resources to continue your work." "And if we refuse?" The general's expression grew serious. "Your research will be classified and sealed." Lyra will be returned to Zephyria, and you'll be restricted from any further contact with alien biology. King Vexthar added, On my world, there are those who see Lyra's influence as a threat to stability. They would prefer that she simply disappear. Alex felt anger rising in his chest. So we're being threatened by both sides? You're being offered a choice, General Harrison corrected. Work with us or face the consequences of working against us. Before either Alex or Lyra could respond, Lyra suddenly placed her hand on her stomach, a look of wonder crossing her face. What is it? Alex asked, immediately concerned. I think I'm with child, she whispered. The silence that followed was deafening. Every person in the clearing stared at her in shock. The implications hit everyone at the same time. That's impossible, General Harrison said. Our medical expert said the genetic compatibility was theoretical at best. Apparently your experts were wrong, Lyra replied, her voice filled with amazement. I can feel the life growing inside me, and it's different, more than just human. Or Zephyrian. King Vexthar stepped closer, his expression intense. Are you certain? I am certain, and there's something else. The child is affecting me. I can feel my abilities growing stronger, and Alex? She turned to him with wide eyes. I can sense your thoughts sometimes now. We're connected in a way I never expected. Alex stared at her in amazement. It was true. Over the past few days, he had begun to notice that he could sometimes predict what she was thinking, and his own mental capabilities seemed enhanced when she was near. The child is already changing us, Lyra continued, making us more than we were separately. General Harrison spoke into his radio, his voice urgent. We need the medical team here immediately, and contact the science division. Tell them the situation just became much more complicated. King Vexthar looked troubled. If this child possesses abilities beyond either of our species, it could be seen as a threat by both our governments. Or as an opportunity, Alex said, firmly. This child could be the key to peaceful cooperation between our peoples. Or it could be something we can't control, the general replied. Something that could threaten both civilizations. Lyra stepped forward, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had spent years studying genetics. This child is not a weapon or a threat. It is proof that our species are meant to work together, not apart. It represents the next step in evolution for both our peoples. That's exactly what we're afraid of, General Harrison admitted. As the sun began to set over the mountains, Alex realized they were facing an impossible choice. They could surrender their freedom and work under government control, or they could face the combined opposition of both Earth and Zephyria. But now there was a third factor to consider. Lyra was carrying what might be the first human Zephyrian hybrid child in history, a being that could either bring their peoples together or drive them apart forever. We need time to think, Alex said finally. Time is something we don't have, King Vexthar replied. News of this pregnancy will spread quickly. There are forces on both our worlds that will see this child as either a prize to be claimed or a threat to be eliminated. Then we'll have to make sure they never get the chance, Alex said, taking Lyra's hand. Whatever happens, we face it together. As night fell around them, the small group found themselves at the center of a decision that would affect the future of two entire civilizations. The child growing inside Lyra represented either the greatest hope or the greatest danger either species had ever faced. And time was running out to decide which it would be. 3 weeks later, everything changed in ways no one could have predicted. Lyra's pregnancy was advancing at an incredible rate, far faster than either human or Zephyrian pregnancies normally progressed. But more amazing than the speed was what was happening to everyone around her. Alex noticed it first. During their daily meetings with the government officials who were monitoring them, he began to see something different in their eyes. The suspicion and fear that had been there before was slowly being replaced by understanding and compassion. People who had been demanding harsh restrictions on Lyra's movements were suddenly asking about her comfort and well-being. It's like the baby is reaching out to them somehow. Alex told Lyra as they walked through the secure medical facility where they were staying. Even the most hostile officials seem to calm down when they're near you. Lyra nodded, placing her hand on her rapidly growing belly. I can feel it too. The child is not just growing physically. Its consciousness is expanding, touching the minds of those around us. But gently, peacefully. Dr. Chen, the lead physician monitoring Lyra's pregnancy, was completely baffled by what he was observing. According to every test we've run, this child should be impossible, he told them during one of their daily checkups. The genetic combination shouldn't work, but not only is it working, it's thriving in ways we've never seen before. The child's influence wasn't limited to the medical facility. Reports were coming in from around the world of strange phenomena. People who had been protesting against Lyra's presence on Earth were suddenly changing their minds. Families that had been divided over the human-alien relationship issue were reconciling. Even world leaders who had been threatening military action were calling for peaceful negotiations instead. On Zephyria, the effects were even more dramatic. The caste system that had defined their society for thousands of years was crumbling as people began to see past artificial divisions. King Vexthar reported that crime rates were dropping, conflicts between different regions were being resolved peacefully, and scientific discoveries were accelerating as researchers from different castes began working together. Something extraordinary is happening, King Vexthar told Alex during one of their video conferences. It's as if your child is teaching our peoples how to truly see each other for the first time. But the most dramatic moment came when Lyra went into labor. The birthing room was filled with representatives from both species, doctors, scientists, government officials, and King Vexthar himself, who had traveled to Earth specifically for this moment. As Lyra's contractions began, something unprecedented happened. Everyone in the room suddenly felt connected to each other in a way they had never experienced before. Alex could sense the thoughts and emotions of every person present. The Zephyrian diplomats were experiencing human emotions with startling clarity. The human officials were understanding alien perspectives as if they had lived them themselves. What's happening to us? Dr. Chen asked in wonder, tears streaming down his face as he felt compassion and understanding flooding through him. The child is showing us what we could become, Lyra said through her labor pains. Not human or Zephyrian, but something greater, something united. When the baby finally arrived, the room fell into complete silence. The child was beautiful beyond description, with features that blended the best of both species. Her skin had the shimmer of Zephyrian heritage but the warmth of human coloring. Her eyes glowed with gentle light, but they held an intelligence that seemed ancient and wise. But most remarkable of all was the effect of her presence. Every person in the room felt a profound sense of peace and understanding wash over them. Old prejudices and fears simply melted away, replaced by a deep recognition of the connection between all living beings. King Vexthar approached the baby with tears in his luminous eyes. She is the bridge our ancient prophecies spoke of, he whispered, the one who would unite the children of the stars. What prophecies? Alex asked, still holding Lyra's hand as she recovered from the birth. The king looked embarrassed. I must confess something to you both. When I gave Lyra to you, as a gift, it was not just diplomatic courtesy. Our oldest texts speak of a time when two species, separated by space but connected by ancient bonds, would be reunited through a bridge child who would teach both peoples how to transcend their limitations. You mean this was all planned? Lyra asked in amazement. Not planned, but hoped for. Our seers identified you, Lyra, as the key to fulfilling the prophecy. Your exile to Wanderer caste was engineered to place you in a position where you could meet the right human at the right time. Alex stared at the king in shock. So even your advisors knew about this? Some suspected, but none of us truly understood what it would mean until now. As they talked, baby Arya, the name came to Alex instinctively, as if the child had somehow communicated it to him, began to exhibit abilities that amazed everyone present. She seemed to understand everything being said, despite being only minutes old. When she looked at people, they felt their minds expand, their capacity for empathy and understanding growing. Over the following days, as news of Arya's birth spread across both worlds, the effects became even more pronounced. The fear and hostility that had marked human-Zephyrian relations transformed into curiosity and cooperation. Scientists from both species began working together on projects that had seemed impossible before. Trade agreements were signed that benefited everyone involved. Most importantly, both societies began to change from within. Humans started questioning systems that created inequality and division. Zephyrians began dismantling their caste structure and embracing the talents of all their people, regardless of birth circumstances. "She's not just our daughter," Alex realized as he watched Arya sleeping peacefully in her specially designed crib. "She's a gift to both our entire species." Lyra nodded, her own abilities continuing to grow stronger each day. "I can sense her dreams sometimes. She sees a future where our peoples work together to explore the galaxy, to find other separated families among the stars and help them reconnect." 6 months later, Alex stood before a joint session of Earth's United Nations and the Zephyrian High Council, broadcast simultaneously to both worlds. Lyra sat beside him, holding baby Arya, who had grown with impossible speed and now appeared to be about 2 years old. "What we've learned," Alex told the assembled leaders, "is that the universe is far more connected than we ever imagined. Our species are not separate entities competing for resources. We are part of a larger family that was scattered across the galaxy long ago, and now we have the chance to come together again." King Vexthar rose from his seat. "I formally propose the dissolution of the caste system on Zephyria and the establishment of a new society based on merit and compassion rather than birth circumstances." The vote was unanimous. On Earth, similar changes were taking place. Nations that had been enemies for generations were forming alliances. Scientific research was being shared freely between all countries. The influence of one small child was transforming an entire planet. As Alex looked out at the assembled representatives of two civilizations, he thought back to that day in the Zephyrian palace when he had been given what seemed like an impossible diplomatic gift. The frightened, supposedly worthless beggar had become the mother of a new kind of being, one who represented hope for both their peoples and for any other lost families they might find among the stars. The incredible truth was that sometimes the most extraordinary things come disguised as the most ordinary gifts, and sometimes what appears to be an ending is actually the beginning of something far more wonderful than anyone could have imagined.